Constitution, outside of the amendments, has not changed for over 250 years. But our government has. That which was once thought to be corrupt is now standard procedure. Chances are, if you're an American citizen, you're aware of how our government works and how a law gets passed. Any law starts out as an idea that is then written in either the House or the Senate as a bill. It then goes to committee, gets debated, and eventually voted on. And if it passes, it's signed into law. Now, while this was all being sorted out in what we know as drafting our Constitution by our founding fathers, they had one concern. That concern was expressed by James Madison in the Federalist Papers, and that concern was in regard to factions. By definition, a faction is a group of people who hold a belief that is adverse to the rights of the American people. Today, we call them special interest groups. James Madison believed that these factions would spend so much time fighting among themselves that their effect on American citizens and their rights would be somewhat minimal. And that's pretty much how it worked out at the federal level. From the time that George Washington, in his farewell address, warned us against these factions by saying, "It is in the interest and duty of wise people to discourage and restrain it," to the late 1920s and 30s, where lobbying a congressperson was thought to be an act of corruption and an act to actually be investigated. In fact, from 1935 to 1940, there was a Senate committee whose sole responsibility was to investigate lobbying activities in Congress. In 1946, lobbying was actually regulated by the Lobbying Regulation Act. 7 years later, in 1953, something happened that changed everything. Views on lobbying were turned upside down. What was that something? It was a Supreme Court ruling that lobbying was protected by our First Amendment. You know, the right to free speech. With that ruling, how our government conducted business changed virtually overnight. Senators and those in the House, their duty to serving the American people changed to serving special interest groups. Why the Supreme Court ruled that way is rooted in our Constitution's right to petition for redress, along with the definition of lobbying itself. Now, take a second and think. What else was happening in the 1950s? What technology was coming into its own? Television, and with it, political advertising, which was expensive. Political campaigns were starting to get expensive, and lobbyists who used to work with lawmakers after they were elected started working with our lawmakers before they were elected to raise cash. In 1975, lobbyists paid out less than $100 million. Today, it's a multi-billion-dollar business, and it's just as corrupt a system as our founding fathers always believed it to be. Good morning, my friends, and it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate you taking the time here. You know, when you start talking government, you can't talk about it in a 3 or 4 minute video. Yeah, I kind of briefed over a lot of topics. I didn't delve deep into it. That's not what my channel does. Yeah, all I got to say is when it comes to government and when it comes to lobbying, I'm totally against it because it's an absolute fulfillment of what James Madison was talking about, you know, it was what they were warning us about. It's here. It's happened. It's lobbying is nothing but absolute corruption. Now, there's different thoughts to that. I mean, one of the definitions of lobbying is grassroots lobbying. I have no problem with that. That's trying to sway a lawmaker with public data, public beliefs, and what have you. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is somebody paying somebody $1 billion to vote a single way. That's what it is. I love you. Peace out. And again, thanks for watching. Out of here.